Hello everyone, I'm George from the University Programmes team and welcome to the fourth event in our virtual series. We hope you've been enjoying the series so far. We've loved to be able to hear from so many students in EMEA all at the same time. If you've missed any of the previous sessions, these are all available to watch on demand on the Agenda tab of this website. We've had some lightning talks from engineers on the theme of Build for Everyone. We've had a CV workshop and a panel discussion on how to build your career in tech. And we've had a tech talk called Autopilot by Google Cloud. So there's some really great content to dive into if you'd like to. As always, during this session, please feel free to leave comments and questions in the chat box below. We've got a whole team of moderators who are going to try and answer as many of those questions as possible as we go through. During this event, we're going to share some top tips for your technical interviews. And we know that the coding interview may seem like a really overwhelming prospect, and we hope that this session is going to be really helpful and a good starting point for anyone preparing for those interviews over the next couple of months. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to my colleagues, Simon and Catherine, who are going to take us through this workshop. Take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Simon, Engineering Manager here at Google. I've been with Google for 6.5 years now and enjoying every day of it. Before that, I had a pretty complicated route to get to Google. I started my career when I was very young. As a 16-year-old, I used to write video games in my bedroom, and that turned into my career for the next couple of decades. I ended up working at Electronic Arts, working on a couple of high-profile games. That was really good fun. And then after that, I moved into the financial world, writing trading systems, which was interesting. And I learned a load about finance and trading, which I found extremely interesting. Following that, I joined Google. First, I was on the Chrome browser team, where I was for about 4 years. And then I moved to the Play Store, where I am at the moment. During my time at Google, I've interviewed many people. In fact, yesterday I did my 160th interview, which was great, a good milestone. So nice to meet you all.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, and my path to Google was not very straightforward as well. I originally studied mechanical engineering at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, and after spending all this time at university, I decided that robotics wasn't for me. I wanted to move into software engineering, and I got a job at Bloomberg in London after teaching myself how to code. This job was over a year away, so to bridge the gap before moving to London, I worked with the Department of Informatics at the City of Zurich as an intern. So I effectively learned how to code in the real world as an intern. After that, I spent over 3 years working on the Bloomberg terminal, mostly using C++ and Python, before I decided to move to Google. I now work with the Google Play engineering productivity team.
So we're going to talk a bit now about interviewing at Google and the basics and the things that you should prepare for. So this is the overall interview format. Your interview will begin with a short introduction, which will help relax you, and you'll get to know the interviewer a bit, and the interviewer will get to know you on a personal level. And then you'll have a technical assessment where you'll be given a technical challenge that you'll need to work through with the interviewer, and we'll be looking at that later on. Catherine and I will be showing you how that works. And then at the end of the interview, you'll have the opportunity to ask the interviewer any questions that you might have regarding Google. So if you're coming to us for a full-time position, the interview experience will be as follows. You'll start off with submitting a coding sample in a survey, which you'll do at home. Following that, you'll have 1 or 2 phone interviews with a Google engineer or possibly a recruiter. And then if they go well, you'll be able to have what we call an on-site interview, although currently they're not going to be on-site. There'll be 3 or 4 of those, and you'll be asked a number of technical questions and different questions by interviewers to explore your skills and abilities. The results of those go on to a committee, which will review all of the feedback they've received about you. And then finally, if they feel that you've hit the Google bar, you'll be made an offer. The process is slightly different if you're coming for a position as an intern. Again, coding sample and survey is the same, and the phone interviews are the same. But following that, you'll then get to meet with a couple of teams at Google who are looking for interns, just to make sure that your skill set and their requirements match each other. Again, all the feedback goes to committee review, and then if you're a good fit for the teams, you will be made an offer. So when you come to apply for Google, it's a fairly simple process. Visit google.com/students, have a look for the different roles there, see which role suits you best, then upload your CV or your resume and a transcript, and then click submit. Easy as that.
You could be asked to solve a problem in any way you choose, and the interviewer could add further constraints and wrinkles. The interviewer is going to look for how you approach a problem, your language syntax, and your overall programming skills. Your interviewer is also going to look for your ability to write quick code fixes and solve immediate new problems. So how you adapt when the problem is changing. And they're going to look for your ability to use your analytical skills to explain your answer, even if it's not the right answer, with well-supported reasoning. We're not going to ask you any brain teasers, puzzles, or trick questions. Technical interviews may cover anything from logic problems to data structures and algorithms. This here is an overview of potential interview topics. So let's say you get an algorithm question. You should share out loud with your interviewer. What approach could you take for this type of question? How would you sort, search, represent, solve, whatever you need? And what is the efficiency of this data structure and algorithm that you chose? So how should you prepare for your interview? The main rule for how to prepare for your interview is invest time in preparing for your interview. Review the fundamentals. Practice, practice, practice. When you practice, use your strongest coding language. You can practice with a shared doc or a whiteboard with a friend, and you can take turns who is the interviewer and who is the candidate. If you need any accommodations, let your recruiter know in advance. We will make sure that you have everything you need to feel comfortable during your interview.
So that's the theory. Now we're going to see it in practice. What we're going to do now is I'm going to run a mock interview with Catherine.
I will take the role of an unprepared candidate and then a prepared candidate, so you can see the differences.
And even when Catherine isn't doing that well, I'm going to play the role of a real Google interviewer, and I'm going to try to get the best out of her that I can. In the interview, I'm going to be asking a question about determining if two strings are anagrams of each other.
This is a common question, as it presents a good base to start discussions and has multiple solutions. So let's begin.
Hello, Catherine. Nice to meet you. I'm Simon, engineering manager here at Google. I'm going to be interviewing you today. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Hi, so nice to meet you. I'm so happy to meet a real Googler. I literally use Google all the time, and my whole family uses Google because of me. It's just, Google is so amazing.
Okay, that's great. That's nice to hear. Can you tell me a bit about yourself, something about your background?
I work at Company X, but I really don't like it. I don't like the people there, and most of them write really bad code, and I'm just way too good there. And, you know, if I worked at Google, I think the people would at least be somewhat smart, and that'd be nice.
Okay. All right. Well, let's think about the problem then. What I'd like you to do is to write me some code which takes two strings and compares them to see if they're anagrams of each other.
Interesting question. But this question is not solvable. Nice try. Trying to trick me now.
Okay, I'm really not trying to trick you, I promise. You say that's not a solvable problem?
Yeah, I did some research in this area, and it was not solvable then, and so it can't be solvable now.
Right, okay. Okay, well, let's think about what went not so well there, and maybe how Catherine could have been better prepared for those questions. So from my perspective, I felt that Catherine was a little bit insincere at the beginning. She was saying how great Google was and everything, and you know, we all like Google, but you don't need to tell me how great Google is. She also said some highly critical things about her previous employer, which is not a good sign. There was a certain amount of arrogance in her behavior, which again I didn't like. Really, Google wants to hire people who are good to work with, and I'm not sure that Catherine saying that she was the smartest person in her team and all of that was a good thing to say. And also, assuming that I would ask a trick question and that the question wasn't possible, put me off as well a little bit.
So instead, I should just be myself and try to enjoy the interview. Instead of saying bad and overly critical things about my previous employer, I can explain what I am looking for in my new role. I should look forward and not backwards. As Simon said, at Google, we're looking for people who we want on our team. So neither I nor my interviewer will know everything. If I have seen the question before, I could choose to mention it to my interviewer. And as the candidate, I should always assume that there's a solution, or at least a productive discussion to be had about this question. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't ask it.
Okay, so with all those things in mind, let's try that again and see if we can do a bit better. Hi, Catherine. Nice to meet you. I'm Simon. I'm an engineering manager here at Google, and I'm going to be interviewing you today. Let's start by telling me a bit about yourself.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Catherine. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous.
Oh, that's fine. It's only human. We've all had the same experience. So tell me a bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I'm currently working at Company X, and I do great things there. But I'm looking for a new challenge, and I would just like to move into the field of big tech. And I've always been really interested in large-scale products.
Sure. Okay, that sounds interesting. Google is the right place if you want to work on products with billions of users. Then definitely Google is a good place to be. Okay, so let's think about the problem. So what I want you to do is to write me a function which I will give 2 strings to, and you need to check the strings to determine if they're anagrams of each other.
I've seen this question before. It was a really long time ago, but I thought you should know.
Okay, that's great that you told me that, but that's fine. Let's work through it anyway, and if you can remember it, that's great. If you can't, I can maybe help you, and we can work it out together. So that went much better. Catherine was honest and open with me. She said that she was nervous, and she said that she'd seen the problem before, all of which is really great. This version of Catherine is someone I would definitely want on my team compared to the other person. Okay, so let's move on to the next stage of the interview. So the problem again that you'll remember is to write a function that takes 2 strings and sees if they're anagrams of each other. So, Catherine, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm thinking what the most optimal solution here is.
Okay. Let's not worry about being too optimal at first. Let's talk about any solution that comes to mind, and we can work up from there.
Okay, I have a solution.
Okay. Right. What are you thinking? What's going on here? What are you doing? Why are you? Tell me about this code that you're writing.
Oh, I'm just sorting and stuff. Just solving the question you asked.
Right. Wait a second. Sorting. Why are you sorting? That seems like an interesting approach.
Oh, actually, yeah. No, I have a better solution. Yeah, you're right. This is a really bad sorting algorithm. I have a better one.
Okay, so right, this is a different approach now. Have you're doing something different?
Yes, I'm just using a different sorting algorithm. So this one is much more optimal than what I used before.
Okay. What sorting algorithm are you using this time?
Oh my God! No, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a better one.
Right. Okay. So this isn't going at all well. Catherine is just writing code, and I'm trying to sort of push her to talk more about it and to understand what she's trying to do, and it's, I'm not getting much feedback. So first of all, Catherine completely skipped the brute force solution. She just went for some optimal solution, apparently, including a sort, which actually isn't the optimal solution, but I never had the opportunity to discuss that with her and maybe guide her. She went straight into coding. We didn't have a chance to discuss the question. She didn't ask any clarifying questions to make sure that she understood that if she was answering the right question even. Her communication was not very good, and there was some unstructured thinking. As far as I could tell, she just kept thinking of different sorting algorithms, and I didn't see what the benefit of that was at all.
So instead, I should mention the brute force solution. I can mention that it's inefficient and maybe I don't even have to code it up, but it's really good for my interviewer to know that I have thought of it. Once the interviewer has asked me the question, I should ask clarifying questions. I should really make sure that I understand what is being asked. Then I should communicate my thoughts. My interviewer cannot read my mind, and they would like to understand what my approach is to the problem so we can have a discussion about it. I should also try to structure my thoughts. This will not only help me, but it will also help my interviewer understand what is going on.
Okay, so let's try it again. And this time, Catherine will put some of those thoughts into practice. Okay, so as you recall, the problem is we want to take two strings and see if one is the anagram of the other.
Okay, so you want me to write a function given two strings, say A, B, C, and C, B, A, that returns true if the strings can be reshuffled and then they're the same?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, what if the strings are in different case? So should the function be case sensitive?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah, let's say it's case sensitive.
Okay, are the strings ASCII characters?
Again, that's a good question. Yes, let's say it's ASCII.
Okay, and can I assume that the string will fit into memory?
Yes, you can. That's a good observation. I mean, sometimes Google does deal with huge amounts of data, but for this case, let's say the strings are reasonably short.
Okay, thank you. So at first thought, a brute force solution would be to iterate over the first string, and then for every character that I come across, I could try to find it in the second string. And I would have to remove it so that I can deal with duplicates. But
Yeah.
I think that wouldn't be very efficient.
Okay, that's a good algorithm, certainly. You say it's not very efficient. What would be the time complexity of that?
It would be order of n squared if n is the length of the strings.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Do you think there's a better solution than order n squared?
Yes, I think a better solution would be to sort them both and then compare them. So that would be order of n log n. And I can think if I can find even a better solution.
Okay, that's true. So there we go. Catherine did much better that time. She demonstrated a lot of her knowledge. She obviously knows about big O notation, and she talked about how a sort is n log n. And she didn't write any code, and we had a good discussion. So that was really promising. So let's move on to the discussion of a possible solution. So, Catherine, you're talking about sorting both strings and comparing them.
Yes, you can sort both strings and then compare, and if they're not the same, then they're not an anagram.
Yeah, that certainly is true. But let's take a step back from that for the moment. Let's think about two strings that are anagrams. So schoolmaster and the classroom, rather marvelously, are anagrams of each other. So a quick question for you. How many letter S's are there in schoolmaster and how many in the classroom?
So when I sort, they will be next to each other. So that's already covered in my solution.
Right, but you didn't actually have to sort the strings to find that out, did you?
So you want a linked list?
How would a linked list help you?
I guess it wouldn't. Maybe a binary tree.
Okay. Have you thought about using a dictionary or a map? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I don't see how.
Right. So thinking about the number of letters, the number of occurrences of each letter in those strings, is there a way that you could keep track of how many S's and how many O's and so on in those example sentences?
I don't know. I don't know. Can I just do a sort?
Okay, fine. Yes, a sort. Go ahead. So there was a couple of things that Catherine could definitely have improved upon. She ignored my hints. I kept trying to steer her away from the sorting solution, but she wouldn't be moved. There was a lot of unfocused thinking going on. She was talking about linked lists and other things which seemed completely irrelevant as far as I could tell. And I felt that she was being adversarial and probably maybe even a little afraid of me. I didn't feel that we were having a good working relationship at all.
So instead, when I'm given a hint, I should try to take it. I should keep in mind that my interviewer is there to help me. He's not my enemy. He's there to help me have a good experience and to see if I would be a good fit for Google. I should try to keep my thinking calm and straightforward and communicate well.
So let's try that again. This time, Catherine will be better prepared and we'll see how it goes. So you were talking about comparing the strings, Catherine.
Yeah, you can sort both strings and then you can compare. And then if they're not the same, they're not an anagram.
Okay, that's certainly true. That would absolutely work. But maybe there's a more efficient way of doing it. So let's take a step away from sorting things for a moment. Let's think about two strings. So schoolmaster and the classroom are anagrams of each other. How many letter S's are there in schoolmaster and how many letter S's are there in the classroom?
So there's 2 in schoolmaster and there's 2 in classroom. There's also 2 O's in both of them. So maybe I can count them, but I'm not entirely sure how I could do that.
Okay, I think this feels to me like a good approach, counting them and checking if the numbers are the same. What do you think? How would you go about counting them? What ideas do you have?
I'm sorry, my brain is a bit overwhelmed right now. Like
that's fine. Take as long as you need.
Maybe I could use a map to count the numbers in both, and then I compare the maps.
Yeah, that would work. That sounds like a good approach. And how would that improve the complexity of your solution?
Well, you iterate over both strings once, so that would be order of n.
Yes, exactly, which would be much better than the n log n sort that you proposed earlier. So that's fantastic. Okay, so that was really good. I had a good dialogue with Catherine, and even though she said in the middle she was overwhelmed and her brain was not working, that was fine. That was a positive sign for me that she was being honest and open and transparent. So that may have felt like a weakness to Catherine, but actually I think that came across as a strength. Okay, so now we're going to move forward and actually write some code. Again, Catherine is going to relapse into an unprepared candidate, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so Catherine, let's write some code. We talked about scanning strings, building a map, and then comparing letter counts.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what you're thinking. What's this all about? What's program?
It stands for anagram.
Okay, and you're passing x and y. What are x and y?
It's the 2 strings.
Okay, and then you've got some for loops going on for z in x and for w in y.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Right, so Catherine wrote some code. She didn't talk about it at all, and I'm, as the interviewer, I'm left sort of a bit baffled about that. So things that could have gone better. I think Catherine Yeah, she wasn't. She was just coding without talking. I had no idea why she was writing stuff, what was going on in her head. Her her variable names were terrible. Her function name was terrible. There was no code refactoring going on, or opportunity for me to discuss code refactoring. I saw an opportunity for refactoring in the code there, but I didn't have the chance to talk to Catherine about that.
So instead, I should code with explanations. I should tell my interviewer what I am currently doing and why. Even if I write the correct solution, if my interviewer doesn't know what's going on, then I didn't help me or the interviewer. I should have good and descriptive variable names. So I shouldn't choose X, Y, Z, A, B, C as variable names. Instead, I could call my function isAnagram and call my count letter count or something along those lines. While I'm writing code, I can refactor my code as I go along. If I am short in time, I can mention that I would refactor this part, but I'm not doing this in favor of time.
Okay, so let's try it again, and we'll take those thoughts into account as we try for a second time. Okay, Catherine, so let's write some code. We talked about scanning the strings and building a map to track the letter counts.
Yeah, so I'm going to write a function called isAnagram.
Yeah.
And it takes two strings, which I'm going to call first string and second string.
Excellent.
I'm going to initialize two maps, first characters and second characters. Typo here. Yeah. Then I'm going to have to iterate over the strings. So for every letter in the first string, I will add this to the map of this letter, increment it by 1. And then I have to do the same for the second string.
Yeah, that's good.
Second. And then once I have populated both maps, I can return if they are the same.
Great. Yeah, that's a nice solution. I think that would work. Looking at the code here, you've got two loops that look quite similar to each other. Tell me about that.
Do you mean these two loops?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to copy paste this, but I guess I could refactor this into a helper function. Should I do that now?
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing to do, definitely.
So I can have a function that I could call count letters of string. I also have to initialize a map, and then I say for letter in this string, letter count of letter increment by 1, and then I return letter count. And then here I can use this and say first one is count letters of first string, and second is count letters of second string. And then the same, I return if both maps are the same.
Great. Yeah, that's really nice. That's cleaned it up nicely. Excellent. Okay, so Catherine did much better that time. That's great. And she's written some really nice, easy to understand code. And I've learned a bit about the thought process behind it. And the fact that she recognized that duplicate code is a bad thing is really good. Okay, let's move on. So the code is now finished. Catherine is going to revert into being an unprepared candidate, and let's see how things could go off the rails even after the code is finished being written.
Okay, I'm done.
Right. So you think that code will work?
Yeah, I think it will work.
Okay. Do you want to run me through an example?
Yeah, so if I have A, B, C, D and D, A, C, B, then you can add A, B, C, and D into the map. And then you add D, A, C, and B into the map. And then you compare, and they're the same anagram.
Okay. I think there's a bug in that code. What do you think? Can you find it?
I don't think there's a bug.
Okay. Tell me about what happens if you try to access a map with a key that isn't present in the map.
I have to initialize the map first.
Yes, that's right. Okay, what would happen if the input was A, B, C, D in capitals and A, B, C, D in lowercase in this example?
Well, there wouldn't be anagrams here.
Yeah, that's fair enough, I guess. So let's talk about the time complexity. What's the complexity of your solution there?
I don't think it's very complex.
Have you heard of big O notation?
Nope.
Okay, all right, no problem. All right, so things went a bit bad there. So Catherine didn't dry run her code, so that if there was a bug there, which there was, she didn't find it. She didn't think about edge cases at all. She just assumed everything was fine, and she was unable to answer my question about time complexity.
So instead, I should dry run my code step by step. I should talk my interviewer through every line of my code. Then, when I'm finished writing my code, I should think about what kind of input a user could give to my function that might break it. I should think about the clarifying question that I have asked at the beginning of the interview. And maybe I can write some assertions to make sure that the input is what I expect it to be. I should also learn about the time and space complexity of common algorithms and data structures. Then I can learn how I can work out the complexity of my solution using this knowledge.
Excellent. Okay, so let's apply those learnings and see how we do. Okay, so that's good looking code you've written there. Excellent.
Yeah, let me check if that code works. I will dry run it with the example you have given me, ABCD and DACB.
Great.
So here we give ABCD and DACB.
Yeah.
And then we will go into count letters. So this is going to be an empty map here. Then for every letter in this string, I would initialize. Oh, okay. So here I would have the letter would be A.
Yeah.
The first one, but it's not yet in the dictionary, so that would not work.
Yes, that's a good observation. Okay, excellent. I'm glad you spotted that. So is there a fix you can do?
Yeah, so I could either check if A is already in the dictionary. If it's not, yeah, I could just put it as 0 and then proceed as I did before. Or since this is Python, I could use a default dict.
Okay, that sounds like a good solution. Do you know how that works? What's going on under the hood there with default dict?
Yeah, it does exactly the same. It checks if a value I'm accessing is present in the dictionary, and if it's not, it will return me the value I have supplied. So if I go and do default dict of an int, it will give me an integer. So in this case, it would be 0.
Okay, yeah, great. All right, so that's looking good.
So if I continue, then here, so I will get back 0, because A is not yet present in the list, and then it will be A1. Then I would come across B here, same story, B1. I would come across C, C1. I would come across D, D1. And then I would return this, and it would be first characters.
Yes, great.
Then for the second string, that is DACB, the first character here is D, so my map will be D1.
Yeah.
Then A, so it will be A1. Then we have C, so C1, and B, which should be B1. So we have the two maps here, and then when we come to this line, we will just compare the two maps and we will see that they are the same, and we will return.
So even though the order is different in the maps, they'll still be the same?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So what's the time complexity of that solution?
So I'm only iterating over the strings, and map access is constant time, so the overall will be order of n. And my first idea was sorting, so n log n, so this version is much better.
Yeah, that's true. So what would happen if I passed two strings, one that was all capitals, A, B, C, D, and the other was lowercase?
Well, this is not yet handled in this case.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be anagrams, but I would have multiple options. I could, for example, convert them all to lowercase, or I could check if they're not lowercase. So it just depends on the contract of the function.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds like a good solution. Okay, so I was much happier with Catherine's solution there. She went through the code, she found that bug. So you may think that if you put a bug in your code and then you admit to it, that's a bad thing. It's not at all. It's a really good sign. It shows that you dry ran your code successfully, and that you're the kind of person that can admit when you made a mistake and fix it. And that's the kind of person that we're very happy to work with on our teams. Right, let's move on to the end of the interview. And again, Catherine is going to lapse into her old ways right after we've dry run the code. Okay, well, thank you for being here today, Catherine. That's the end of the interview. Time goes so fast with these things. Do you have any questions for me?
No questions, no.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for your time here.
Did I pass the interview?
I don't make that decision. I write up my notes and I send them with a copy of the code off, and someone else makes that decision.
Okay. Well, this was awful. I will probably be blocklisted by you, and I'll just never reply again.
It's fine. Don't worry about it at all. Even if it turns out that it didn't go that well, we would encourage you to try again another time.
Thanks. I won't.
Oh, okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was all a bit awkward. So Catherine hadn't prepared a question for me, which is always a good idea. She asked me if she'd passed the interview. That's just a little embarrassing and awkward, probably not a good idea at all. And she was discouraged by her perceived rejection. She assumed it had gone badly and said she wasn't going to try again, which I think is unfortunate.
So instead, I can have a go-to question to ask. I should show interest in my future team and company, and maybe the answer could be valuable to me. I shouldn't ask if I've passed the interview, because the interviewer doesn't make the decision at Google. The interviewer just writes up their notes and passes it on. And then finally, I shouldn't be discouraged by my feeling that it went bad. I should just apply again, keeping in mind that we evolve as people and developers.
Right, so let's see if we can do a better version this time. Okay, Catherine, thank you very much. The interview is now finished. These things go so quickly, I always find. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So what is the best thing about working at Google for you?
That's a good question. We get to work with a lot of really smart people. I like that. Also, we have a lot of ownership of our projects. We don't sort of get micromanaged or get told what to do, which is also really good. I also like the free food when we're in the office anyway. That's a definite perk.
Yeah, it sounds like you're enjoying it there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time today. I've enjoyed this interview. It's been good. So good luck with whatever happens next.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed this interview.
Excellent. Your recruiter will get back to you within the next couple of days. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Nice meeting you. Bye.
See you. So that's the end of our mock interview workshop. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it was useful for you. Some things to keep in mind at the interview then as a summary is try to enjoy it, be friendly and honest, and communicate your thinking, even if you're not entirely sure you're thinking on the right lines.
Of course, this will not guarantee you a job at Google, but it will maximize your chances of your interview going well.
We're going to hand back to George now, who has got some more information for you.
Thank you so much, folks. That was a really insightful session. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone at home did too. I think there's a lot to learn there. So if you want to have some resources to further your skills, to build on the things that you've learned today, you can take a look at our tech dev guide at g.co/tech dev guide, which contains all the information that you'll need. There's even more interview tips. There's further study sections, stuff on building your CV, lots of information there. We also often suggest 2 books. So you can take a look at Cracking the Coding Interview and Programming Interviews Exposed. These are 2 really great ones if you're preparing for technical interviews. And you can also take a look at our YouTube channels. We have Life at Google and Google Students. And we also have our Build Your Future website. So if you're looking for extra resources, there's plenty here to keep you going. And I think sort of the final tips would be just to over communicate during that interview and just practice all the time. You could be the best coder ever when you're on your own, but when you're actually having to communicate and talk things through to an interviewer, that's a real learned skill too. So the more you can practice, the better. So now we're lucky enough to move on to a live Q&A session where we'll have Catherine and Simon back to answer as many of your questions as possible. So stay tuned and we'll be back in 1 minute. everyone, welcome back. Before we dive into the live Q&A, we wanted to announce last week's swag prize winner. So congratulations to Sophia from the University of Padua. We're gonna get in touch with you via email after this to get your details, but huge congratulations to you. So let's dive into the live Q&A. So we've been asking this question to all of our speakers throughout the series. So Catherine, I'm going to come to you first. What does build for everyone mean to you?
To me, that just means we don't just build software for the sake of building software, but we actually make sure that our tools are useful. So we don't just build it for you and me, but we build it for everyone. And this means we have to think about our users and how they use our products. So for example, we have to consider questions like, do they have a slow or fast internet connection? Do our users share a phone? Are they maybe having disabilities, like are they blind? For example, do they need to use a screen reader? So these are quite interesting questions to answer, and we definitely do think about those before we start the project.
100%. I think that's something that we're really proud of here at Google as well. That's a really good point. Simon, anything to add to that?
I would agree entirely with what Catherine says. I know that when I started coding many years ago now, I was writing video games, and so the target audience were like me. We were lots of teenage boys. I was a teenage boy writing games for teenage boys, and that was fine, that worked. But these days we're writing software for billions of people who are very different from us, very diverse from all parts of the world. So we need to make sure that the engineering resources that we have within Google reflect our users, to make sure that we take their perspectives into account.
Yeah, such a valid point, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Somebody has asked, will the new grad positions be opening as well as the internships next week? And actually, we hire those roles on a rolling basis. So you can set up an alert on google.com/students, and we recommend applying basically as soon as you feel ready to interview, hop on there and apply for those roles anytime. Okay, so the next question is, what is the best way to learn to code? So Simon, I'll come to you first.
I mean, practice, I think, is the real key here. So as I said, when I was younger, I started making video games, and I would go out to the arcades and play games. And some of you have commented on my Space Invaders game. It's that machine in effect that's got me to where I am today. But I would go to the arcades, play the games, and then I'd come home and try to understand how they worked and try to write my own version of the games. And that was really valuable. It gave me a foundation so that when I actually started being taught how things are meant to be done, I understood why they needed to be done. It gave me an intuitive foundation for everything. Yeah, so practice.
Makes sense. Yeah, always good tip to practice.
I would like to add to that if you have no background in coding, there's a lot of really good resources online. There's courses on Coursera or Udemy or similar platforms. And I would definitely recommend that you find a buddy who also wants to learn to code, so you can share your problems together, and you can maybe help each other and work through difficult patches.
Yeah, great, really good tips. Thanks, folks. Okay, so the next question, what's the best strategy to handle situations where we can't think of a solution or get stuck in implementing a solution? Is it appropriate to ask the interviewer for hints? Simon, we'll come to you.
Yes, it's absolutely okay to ask for hints. You probably won't need to ask. The best thing to do is, if you have no idea, is just to be honest, as we've said. Say to the interviewer, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to get started here. And the interviewer will then step in and start to give you hints. Something you could consider doing is, if you know about a related area, then you might want to start with that. So in the example that Catherine and I were just demonstrating with the anagram problem, if you knew about comparing strings, you might say, well, I don't know how to do that, but does this have anything to do with comparing strings? And then the interviewer could say, oh yes, it is part of that, and use that as a place to start and help you.
Yeah, great. And I think what the person's getting at here is that you really should be able to have that communication with your interviewer and ask for hints and tips. Like, they're there to help you. And so, yeah, I think your answer is perfect. I hope that makes that feel a little bit more at ease. Thanks for the question. Next one. How many questions do we have during the 35-minute technical interview? So we've had quite a few questions on that. So Catherine, it would be great if you could invite them.
So this is up to the interviewer, but usually they will ask you just one question. But that question is usually just the basis for a discussion, and it can take many different forms. So just like here in Anagram, we could start talking about sorting algorithms. We can talk about hash maps and how hash maps work. It can take so many different shapes and forms that it doesn't really matter how many questions were asked. Usually as well, depending on how you do during the interview, the interviewer will modify the question and modify the assumptions, and then see how you react and how your code handles these different scenarios.
Thank you. Okay, the next one. What are the main differences between the STEP position and the regular internship position? Okay, so the STEP internship, it's still a 12-week internship, but the difference is it's for first and second year undergraduates. And the internship really has a focus on providing, I guess, more developmental opportunities. It's for students from groups historically underrepresented in tech, and it provides a lot of technical training and also a lot of professional development. And what's quite cool about it is you get actually paired up with another STEP intern. So you get that person to work with the whole way through. You get a lot of time to work with Googlers, lots of different developmental opportunities across the org. And in terms of interviewing for STEP positions in comparison to the regular internships, you'll find that actually the questions are the same, but perhaps the expectations of your answers are a little bit different because they're going to compare you. They realise that you're a first or a second year in comparison to someone who's perhaps in their third year. So do bear that in mind when applying for those positions. Okay, Simon, we have the next questions coming for you. Do you have to implement from scratch data structures such as linked lists, or can you use those already implemented? What an interview for the position of what does an interview for the position of machine learning engineer look like? Any thoughts on that question? Quite a few questions within the segment.
Okay, I can certainly answer the first half of the question, which is, do you have to implement data structures from scratch? If the question is explicitly about a data structure, so if the question is something like write code that reverses a linked list, then it makes sense for you to actually implement a linked list. Generally, though, the questions are much higher level. The Google interview process is trying to find out how you solve problems, how you go about thinking, what kind of a creative solution finder you are. So if you need to use a data structure that maybe isn't natively available in the language, so if you're doing, I don't know, you're writing C code and you need to use linked lists and they don't exist in C, what you can do is, first of all, you can say, do you want me to write a linked list? And the interviewer will tell you. But the best way to do probably is to say, right, I'm going to assume that there's a helper class here called linked list, and I'm going to instantiate it and use it. And then you can say to the interviewer, I'm going to use this, but if there's time afterwards, I can implement that if you'd like. And the interviewer will probably say, oh no, don't worry about implementing it, just use it as if pretend that it exists.
Yeah, great. And I think that really comes back to that communication piece, doesn't it? Asking the questions and testing out rather than just jumping straight into something and doing it without asking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, thank you. So Catherine, the next question's for you. Are the coding questions, do they have to be explicitly coded with proper syntax, or is using certain conventionally accepted shorthands acceptable?
I don't know what is meant here with conventionally accepted shorthands, but generally we expect the solutions to be written in proper code. So if you, in fact, do what Simon mentioned before, so you say, oh, I'm going to assume there's a helper class here, it's called linked list, and this is how I would use it. That's totally fine as long as you communicate it. But what's not fine is just writing pseudocode, or for example, only writing comments.
Okay, makes sense. Great, thank you. Okay, and would the coding problems in real interviews for internships be about the same difficulty as this one that we've been talking about at the event, or would they be harder?
Generally, the questions at Google will start simple and then they get harder and harder as you solve it. So we usually ask questions that are extensible and, as I mentioned before, provide a good basis for discussion. So they can be really simple or they can be really hard, but that doesn't mean you've failed or passed either. But it's worth mentioning that this one is quite simple.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we've run out of time for questions now, unfortunately. So thanks so much to the folks that wrote the questions in. Hopefully you've got all the answers that you wanted. And thank you so much to Catherine and to Simon for being here this evening. Great to have you along. I think you shared some really insightful things that, that everyone at home is going to find super useful. So thank you so much. Just a few things to finish off. So we have our next session for the virtual series and our last session. It's going to be on the 5th of November and it's going to be a Women in Tech panel. So we really hope that you can join us there for the last one in the series, if you've been already tuning in. And if you haven't, and if this is the first thing that you've tuned into on our virtual series, you can actually watch all of the previous events on demand. So just navigate back to the main home screen and you'll be able to see everything. And we'd also love it if you could fill in the survey, which is on the side of the screen. It's the first time we've done a virtual series for so many people, and we'd hope to do some more. So we'd love your feedback. Anything that you want to see or you'd like to be changed, then please do let us know. And finally, we want to announce that our EMEA internship applications will be opening on Monday. So this includes the STEP internship that we've mentioned in this Q&A, also the software engineering and site reliability engineering internships and the PhD internships. So all you need to do is check out google.com/students on Monday and you'll be able to send in your application. If you joined us for the CV workshop, hopefully that'll be a really good one. So great, thank you so much for joining us and see you next time.